Night Swim. We saw Night Swim last night. And it was a pretty crowded theater. I thought the theater that we usually are at, I think on the weekends is pretty crowded, and it was a new horror movie. And there were even some people making comments about the characters and what they were doing as the plot kind of unfolded, which is not atypical, I think, for a horror
Right.
movie.
Yes.
But I went into this, I'll say, with kind of low expectations. Like I tried not to really read any reviews, but I saw the trailer, was like, maybe it's going to be okay. I think you had some interest in it also, which is why we saw it. And
Yeah.
the plot basically is this, and I'm probably going to gloss over a lot of important things, but this family who has relocated, the husband of the family is a MLB player, a baseball player who has been diagnosed with MS, I think it is. They talk about it in the movie. He's had some injuries, and so he's kind of out of the big leagues for now. They're trying to start a new life, so they end up in the Twin Cities area, right? So they find this neighborhood that they like, and they find a house, and it's a little bit older, needs some work, and it has a pool in the backyard. They decide, though, that it's the perfect place for them to settle down. The spouse, the wife, has got a job at the local school that's nearby, the mascot of which is the lake trout, one of my favorite mascots.
Of course. Yes.
In a movie, because why not? That's kind of amazing.
Well, lake trout.
Yeah, go lake trout. I don't remember what their cheer was, if they had one, but
I don't know that they had one.
they probably didn't have one. But anyway, so they settle on this house and they get settled in. They kind of revive the pool, and then a lot of strange occurrences start happening where they think they see figures, but they're not 100% sure. Some magical healing properties come about. And I should say that we are going to get into probably some spoiler territory with this. So if you haven't seen it and want to go in completely fresh, then maybe watch it and then come back to this. But
yeah,
magical healing properties, but then they start to realize there's a past to the pool. They do a little bit of digging, and then it kind of unravels from there, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know, Kim. I mean, anything else big plot point wise that would be worth kind of highlighting with all that?
Nope. I feel like that pretty much covers it.
Yeah.
So one of the things I'll say, because I thought of it as you were going through this like synopsis, is I listened to this podcast a long time ago, and it said the best way to market your story or know that you have a strong story is if you can summarize it in one sentence. Because if you can summarize it in one sentence, that means people by word of mouth can share what it's about.
Yeah.
And I feel like the issue with Night Swim and with really, I feel like with all the movies we've been talking about lately, is they are not one sentence summaries, because you can't just say, oh, it's a pool and some strange things are happening. There's also some healing properties. There's also like, there's all these layers that are more and more. I'm just like, why? Why do you need to add these layers? I feel like this was one part ghost, one part folklore. Like, hey, did you ever read the book Tuck Everlasting?
I did not read that.
It was more my generation, and they made a movie also.
Are we different generations, Kim?
I think we are.
Okay, just checking to be sure.
I think I'm on the very cusp of mine. But
I don't even know. I guess I'm a millennial, I guess.
I don't know. Are you?
I was born in 82, graduated high school in 2000. So is that,
maybe,
I don't know.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
Tuck Everlasting is about a pond, spring water that has magical properties. So that's when we start to get to that in the movie. I'm like, what? Where we go? What? This isn't a horror movie anymore. This is like some weird folk tale. What is happening?
Well, and to your point about the plot being, I don't know if I'd say unnecessarily complicated, but verging on that. Like, I think about a movie like Jaws, and it's like man versus shark. Like that's the movie, right? Like,
I thought about Jaws a lot in this movie, because I went in with like no expectations, because I really didn't know what this movie was going to be about. I knew it was about a pool.
Yeah.
And some creepy stuff happening, but that's about all I knew. And it had the potential to be very good, I think. And I kind of knew that it wouldn't. And it wasn't in some ways. But up until a point, I felt like it was, because it, to me, was doing what Jaws did. We didn't see anything. It's like you don't see the shark for most of the movie. And then when there's the reveal, you're like, oh my God. In this, one of my favorite scenes in this movie is when the little boy is diving for quarters, and the quarters just keep getting thrown in. and he's
Yeah.
going deeper and deeper, and you as the audience know nobody is throwing in those quarters for him. It is like mystical,
Like
supernatural.
entities doing it.
And,
Yeah.
but, and you don't see anything. And to me, that was one of the most suspenseful parts of the movie, because you don't see it. But the moment we saw something, and it was not a very good
Well,
something.
I mean, you and I don't remember if it was the very first ghost, whatever that we saw, but there was one maybe midway through the movie. I can't remember when it was exactly, but
Yeah.
I described it as looking like a burnt gingerbread man. Like it
I do
just
think it was the first. I think
was
it
it the
was.
first one? Yeah. It just
Yeah.
that was so that
Kind of, because we do see the girl's hair in the drain, which was given
right.
it vibes, some
Yeah.
Pennywise vibes, but you don't like, which, and that's fine with me. I like seeing hair caught in a drain, but
You're like, if there's hair in a drain, I'm in.
like it also felt very like The Ring. It
Yeah, yeah.
was, there were a lot of elements that I thought worked, but then once they went too much and too in your face, then I was like, oh, this isn't scary at all
Yeah,
anymore.
I mean, and I thought about this last night after we left the theater. I think the way I would summarize this is it was a really promising premise that kind of, for me anyway, collapsed under the weight of some unintentional humor. I mean, like there were
Yeah.
moments in it where I was laughing at the movie, and I don't think I was supposed to be laughing at the movie necessarily, and some not great dialogue. Not constantly, because there was actually some pretty good dialogue at points, but there was, I think it was the dialogue and the delivery of the dialogue. Like I remember there was a scene toward the end where we both kind of laughed at how, I think it's Wyatt Russell, Kurt Russell's son. We were kind of
Okay,
talking about
yeah.
that a little bit. He said this kind of thing after coming out of a trance where he's like, "Oh, is he okay?" But just the way he said it was
Yeah.
like not great delivery. I
Like
don't
when
know,
your
like
son is almost dying, and you're like, "Is he okay?" Like,
yeah, and it's almost like with like a comical note in his voice, the way he says it. Like I don't know, it was just weird.
yeah, yeah,
So I think the premise was good, and I would agree that maybe up until about the halfway mark of the movie, I was thinking, I'm not blown away by this, but so far up until then, it was a competent horror movie. Like I was kind of appreciating most of
yeah.
what it was doing.
And because so much horror these days, I say, it is graphic, like Saw and things like that. I appreciated a film that I thought was going to kind of go in the opposite direction, and then ultimately it didn't. But I guess so like we talked about this a little bit when we were reviewing the Black Christmas movies, the most recent one, where it's all these layers of myth and like you didn't need all of that. You don't have to tell us that the spring water, and then there's like, I'm sorry, why can't we just have a person that like drowned their loved one in a pool 50 years ago and now the pool's haunted? Like,
Yeah, that
that's
that
where
was
I thought it would go, and then it added all these layers, and I was like wishing wells. It's like, what if we want to make a haunted wishing well? Just make a haunted wishing well. Just go
yeah, and
do
I
that,
mean,
and maybe we should. That sounds like a good movie.
we totally call it wishing well, right? I mean, like it's this stuff writes itself, I guess, to an
Yes.
extent.
Wishing
I
hell.
think wishing hell.
Mhm.
Yeah, that that's a good
Mhm.
play on that. I like it. You have a
Mhm.
flaming coin on the poster that's being thrown in or something. I don't know. It would be pretty awesome. But anyway, yeah, like I feel like when they started to introduce some of the backstory, it kind of crossed the line of, okay, well, now I want to know a little bit more about this. If you're going to
Yeah.
go that route, but they tease just enough to make it kind of confusing. And I think one of my comments after we were walking out of it was, I don't know if they just sort of imagined there would be a sequel and they would have kind of an opportunity to dig into that background a little bit more. Like I don't really know exactly sort of what
Yeah.
the end game was with that, but yeah, I mean, I think in the end, it's just one of those movies that's okay. Uh, it has some moments that work well, but it's not anything that I would recommend people see in a theater. I mean, it's totally something you could stream at
Right.
home,
I was
not really
thinking
lose anything with the
about
experience.
like a scale. And I was like, okay, on a scale of 1 to 3, 1 is a movie that I saw and I don't need to see again. 2 is a movie that I've seen that I would watch again if someone asked me to watch it with them. And 3
Yeah.
is a movie that I've seen that I would willingly watch again on my own. And I would
Right.
give this a 2.
Okay.
Because I would watch it again if people were like, "Hey, I want to see that," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, okay, I'll sit down and watch this with you." Like, I would watch it again if the occasion arose, but I would not willingly seek out to watch this movie again.
I would give it a 1.5. I'm somewhere in the middle on that. Like,
Okay.
the thing is, I don't think it was truly like a terrible movie. Like, I
No,
don't think that's the case, but I
no.
also wouldn't say it's good. Like, it's
I
just one of
think
those
if you're
things that,
not highly critical, as we are a little bit, of horror movies, I do think a person will enjoy it maybe more than we did. But I think because we come at it with a more critical lens, we're going to find fault with some of the choices that were made more than somebody else would.
yeah, yeah, that's true. And I think I didn't think there was anything especially creative about it, or I don't know, just fresh to me.
I do like this idea of a wishing well, like this idea that like you get you and that was a kind of a cool approach to it. This person who obviously wants something, he wants his career back, he wants his health back, and the water it is granting that wish, but it's going to need a sacrifice. I like that. But then I don't care about the history. Then don't go through the history of the families who did it before. That I don't care about. I don't need like that's just stick with that then.
Yeah,
And
and I think yeah, I agree, and I think the other piece of it to me that was just a little bit jarring, I totally agree with the idea that once you have wrapped up sort of the story, you don't need a ton of resolution after that, but it was almost too abrupt. Like, it just ends in a way that's like, I don't know, like, it was a little bit jarring in the way that
the
they kinda wrapped up
resolution
the
that
whole
we
thing.
got after was a little odd. Like, but
Yeah.
it was different. You know, like you think about Amityville Horror, this family that just went through this horrific thing, and then you always leave the house at the end. So big spoiler, they don't. And
Well,
I like
did they not? Is that what it
that's
was?
why
Like,
they
they
don't
just
leave the house. They
ok
stay in the
okay, well,
house
I knew they
after
filled in the
everything that's
pool or
happened.
whatever, but yeah.
Right. And I was like, that's interesting. And also, but like realistically, this town hates you. And
Yeah.
you're really gonna stay here in this town that hates you now? Like, okay, cool, fine.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, and it was funny toward the end, I kept thinking I wanted something comparable to what we get at the end of the original Poltergeist, like the pool scene with all the, like, skeletons and things coming out, like, just all
Well,
like
what we thought that one pool party would turn into a massacre, which would have been so cool, but it didn't.
yeah, and if they had done that, they could have titled this "Pool Party Massacre," and that would have been, like, way but,
Also another
again,
great movie.
another great movie, and I don't maybe that exists somewhere, I don't know, so, again, my personal recommendation would be just wait for it on streaming if you have kind of a passing interest in it. I don't think it's worth I don't even know how much the tickets were, like, $12 or whatever it was, like, I don't think it's worth that, personally.
Yeah, I don't think a person needs to see it in theaters. I do think the first half of the movie does a nice job with setting suspense and creating tension without seeing any sort of physical threat. And then the second half of the movie kind of phones it in, or at least for me, lost that appeal.
So, would your rating be that it sinks, swims, or treads water? What would your,
It treads
pool
water.
it treads
That's
water?
what I would say. It treads water.
Mine would be that it's really in need of somebody to come get it out of the water immediately. I don't know, like, it's just not yeah, what I said on the way out, which I'll stick with, is it is the best baseball movie I've seen in 2024 so far, for whatever that's worth.
Whatever that's for
Y
whatever that's worth.
so, any final parting thoughts on Night Swim, Kim? I didn't mean for
Um,
that to rhyme, by the way, but it did. Night Swim, Kim.
I sorry, I see my child sneaking downstairs when he's not supposed to be.
Oh,
Um,
that's awesome.
I think that my hold on, baby. I think that my final thoughts on this movie are that it tried to do something I think a little bit unique with what we've known as like the haunted house, the family in need of something, and now of course supernatural entities are going to take advantage of that. I think they tried to do something unique and almost got there, and
Yeah.
then kind of lost themselves in the deep end.
They needed a life jacket at the end,
Yes, they needed a life
something
jacket.
to keep it going. So I don't know, do we have anything next on our agenda? Like, I know we had talked about, like, the Happy Death Day movies or something, but,
Oh
like, I
yeah.
don't.
Well, I'm still trying to get through Nosferatu.
Oh, that's right,
So
Nosferatu, I did
we
watch
do
it,
want
yep,
to do
yep.
Nosferatu. And there was a movie, Imaginary. It's not coming out until March, but that was a movie that they advertised that I'm pretty excited to see.
And we had talked about, I'm looking for it, the classic monsters, like the Universal classic
Yeah.
monster movies, which I actually picked up some of those. I found a good sale on those on 4K, so I couldn't resist
Oh,
like getting
cool.
them.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
have a couple collections as well, like Creature from the Black Lagoon, I really
Yep.
wanna rewatch. So I'm excited to kind of do this more historical deep dive into horror.
Anyway, Kim, as always, it was awesome.
Yes.
So yeah, Nosferatu, I guess, I don't know, maybe like next week sometime we could
That would
talk.
be a great goal. I
Yeah.
rehearsals start for the next show that I'm directing, but I
When
will
does when does that start?
Monday rehearsals
Okay.
start for the last 5 years, but it should be it's a little bit of a lighter schedule-ish. So
Okay.
we'll see.
Cool.
We'll
Okay,
see how
awesome.
things
Well, we'll be back soon with Nosferatu. And yeah, everybody, thanks for watching.
Thank you.